I think probably the most common misconception is that there's a magic formula that you can do something without changing any of your operations or processes and thought processes. This is not a minor change. This is transformative change. Transformative change requires transformative thought.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode in Packaging Europe Sustainability Perspectives podcast series, which continues their discussions led at Packaging Europe Sustainable Packaging Summit online. And everybody in the packaging industry will be very aware that paper has become an increasingly popular packaging material and even replacing plastics in some applications. But in order to achieve the desired functionality, obviously these papers need barriers. And today we'll look at the challenges and opportunities around paper packaging from the perspective of a chemical company. I'm very pleased to welcome Bill Keeker to the podcast. He is Senior Director, Global Strategic Marketing for Consumer Solutions at Solenis. And together we'll explore the power of barriers and how they can help scale up paper packaging. And he already discussed the topic of barriers and paper at the Sustainable Packaging Summit, which took place last year in Utrecht in the Netherlands. But today I'm looking forward to delving even deeper into the topic. Welcome, Bill, and thanks very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
To get started, could you tell me a bit more about Solenis and what the company does for all of our listeners who might not be familiar with the company?
We are a large global chemistry company who's the leader supplying functional and process chemistry to the paper industry. So we are in most of the suppliers' mills around the world. We're in over 130 countries. And that expertise in making paper really set us up well for increasing the functionality of paper. And the functionality is all things that allow paper to do things different than it did before. We're certainly going to talk about barriers, but it's beyond that. Can we work to increase the recyclability of paper? Can we work to allow paper to go through recycle streams more times? Can we work to allow paper to be more compatible with final end converting, to be able to work faster in carton forming, in flexible packaging, et cetera. All of those things in functionality starts with paper, and that's our expertise. And that's what enables us to take this challenge, which is assisting the industry in replacing plastic through more functional paper.
That is obviously a very high in demand application at the moment and also going forward. I wanted to get your take on what are the biggest challenges, sort of starting broadly, paper faces, especially when it comes to more tricky applications that, as you mentioned, set out to replace plastic packaging, because obviously plastic has some capabilities that are, well, for the moment, pretty unique.
Yeah. Yes, it does. And first off, this is hard. This is a challenge that you have to be fully committed to, from a converter, from a brand, from a supplier standpoint, in understanding the nuances and being able to address them. Really, I'd probably focus on 4 key challenges. This hasn't happened, Elizabeth, as fast as any of us in the industry would have expected. We would have expected growth of paper at a faster rate versus plastic than it's happened. So let's really put on our analytics and our analysis glasses and say what has been the challenges. And I'd say 4. 1 is truly understanding what the fit for use requirements of a package are. If you retrospect and say, hey, I need something to perform exactly like my plastic packaging has, it's going to be a real challenge. There's going to be things that you're going to have to understand on what is the exact fit for use requirements expected by all members of the chain. This is through distribution to the consumer and on converting equipment, as I mentioned previously. Second is regulation. Boy, that's been fun, trying to understand the map that's going around the world and assist our customers in being ahead of the game on what's coming from a regulatory standpoint to allow them success in the most markets possible. Couple that are sort of tied together, I think, and one that's probably been not talked about enough by the industry is current equipment capability. If we're looking at replacing plastic, well, one of the things we need to do is have paper that actually works on equipment that's currently used in plastic. That's different. Sealability is different. The speed, the requirements of actually forming a package are different. And being able to do that without adding capital cost is really key. And that's where we really get into what is the functionality that we can build into the substrate as well as the coating. And then this all ties to cost. And it's understanding total cost of ownership as you're looking at it. The industry's made significant strides here. But we do have to understand, in fact, what is total cost of ownership as we look at these applications.
We're going to dive a bit deeper into the points you've raised in a little while. And I wanted to zoom in a bit more on the functionality and barriers aspect of things. What are some common misconceptions about these that you've come across in the course of your work?
I think probably the most common misconception is that there's a magic formula that you can do something without changing any of your operations or processes and thought processes. This is not a minor change. This is transformative change. Transformative change requires transformative thought, and that includes internal processes. It includes collaborating differently as well as we go. I think also there is so much energy around this that there is a feeling of, and so many new things, that there's a feeling that we're waiting for something. And I would challenge that. We have the tools, we have the knowledge. There's no reason to be on the sidelines today. I think this is a challenge we can take today, and you see billions of packages being converted to paper annually today around the world, and I think that will only accelerate.
Yes, I think that's a very important point. I think it can be tempting to just wait for the next thing or wait for more clarity from regulation, but yeah, so it can be good to just get going. I wanted to zoom in a bit more on what you said before. How does Solenis collaborate with its customers to guarantee the best results, both from a sustainability and a performance perspective, following on from what you've said in your previous answers?
Well, Elizabeth, that's a very big question. And I think that's actually a difference. And if you look at some of the companies who have been more successful out there in the supplier community where it's out with the process, I think we're not alone, but I think there is things that as we set up the process, the first thing is a commitment to listening. It's a commitment. I think there has been probably, if we look at case studies where we have not reached success in the industry, and this isn't Solenis, broader thinking on plastic replacement. It's when we had a solution hunting for a problem. Let's actually fully define the problem. Then let's fully define what our roadmap is to addressing it with all the right people in the room. I think if you look at the hallmarks of those companies who can be really excellent partners, and I would include us in that, but if you look at the hallmark of all of those companies who can be excellent partners, they have that broad-based expertise to be able to address wide-ranging questions. Not just, is this the right coding, but what does it do in applications? What's regulatory effect in all of the countries and cities of the world that you want to market your product in? What is the impact upstream, downstream to this change? And in all portions of the converting, distribution, and retail or food service sale of the product. And listening skills and those broad-based expertise and a willingness to do that and not just promote solution X, I think is really the hallmark of the difference of the leaders here.
I'm going to come to the different challenges of different markets shortly. But before that, I wanted to also ask you, how important is it for paper manufacturers and chemical companies to collaborate to achieve the best results and also avoid inefficiencies?
Yeah, I think it's not only is it very important, it's important to do it in probably a deeper way than we have with previous challenges. I think it is important for paper companies to engage with their suppliers across their chain. Not just typically, if you look at where that touch point has been, it's been the operations team that makes paper touching their chemical suppliers. We really need to broaden that. We need to have range where the commercial teams of a paper company are fully aware of what's possible and are collaborative in the process as well. So it is a critical thing, and it's critical that we extend these relationships beyond where they've been historically.
You mentioned before, obviously, there's a lot of different recycling and recyclability regulations in different markets across the globe. How do you cater for that or address that big challenge at Svedis?
And that actually really leads well into your previous question. It's Elizabeth, it's really that collaboration where you set up to understand exactly what is the customer's commercial goals here. Where are they going to be? What markets are they going to be? And then if you've got that broad-based expertise we talked about from a regulatory, do you have somebody who's actually followed what's happening in the state of Delaware, or what's happened in California, what's happened in all of the country map across Europe, and what's coming? Then you can really be that partner that they require. But it is having that. This does not lend itself to traditional linear business flows. That's where we've made a decision as a packaging company that we're going to do X, and then we send it to the purchasing folks and say, go buy this. This is collaboration within the company and wide range with a broader audience of potential suppliers and influencers.
I was wondering, do you have any concrete examples of such a collaboration or a product that particularly illustrates what we talked about so far?
I do. And it's regulatory driven in the approach. It's not actually a barrier coating project. It's something that was done with internal chemistry within the fiber-based product. But if you really look at it, this was a long-term approach where we had the opportunity to predict a regulatory-based need years before it happened, which was PFAS, and took several years in developing, before it was required and before there was a market for it, an opportunity to remove PFAS from food service packaging that was molded fiber. And that then allowed us, when the need developed, when the regulatory and the consumer side coalesced, that we were in a position to provide the industry with a need that wasn't yet there at the time that it was developed, but predictable. And that's probably, you look at what's happening globally with that, and that certainly would be a key example of the kinds of things that are possible here.
And obviously you have long experience in the field. And what advice would you give to brands who are looking maybe to replace plastic packaging with barrier papers? What would you say to them?
Well, I have had the opportunity to work with brands working on this for 20 plus years as it goes in a variety of roles. And I guess I look at some of the people that have been the most successful and how do you model that? And what was really the difference? And the really difference, I'll probably go back to something I said a few minutes ago, is first thing they did was established a problem set and a team differently than their traditional business flows. They saw this as a key challenge. They brought the experts internally to fully define the project and approach, and they brought in all relevant stakeholders to address it. That was probably, if you look, the hallmarks of the ones that that we can talk about, or see or touch when we go to grocery stores, retail or food service. Those have been some of the most successful, and the folks that are out there. So what I would suggest is if you look at who's been successful, they took a product, they took a very, very holistic approach, and they broke it into parts that others didn't. They didn't try to do a drop in. They tried to look at this and says, what's the impact on X part on our total cost of ownership of all parts? And this includes not just the cost of the material replacement, because your material replacement is typically going to be more expensive. But if you look at the total cost of ownership, when you talk, what can we do on converting efficiency? What can we do on distribution efficiency? What can we do on the total things to minimize or eliminate this cost difference? Those are some of the things that have been the most exciting projects for me over the past 20 years, and some of the ones that have really showcased success.
To wrap up our conversation today, what potential do you see for advancements and innovations in papers for packaging, replacing plastic packaging, in barriers, or in any other sort of facets in the coming months or even years going forward?
Well, I'll go back to where we sort of started this, Elizabeth. We go, what's the 4 challenges, and what's the thing that gets us to addressing those 4 challenges? So if we say the 4 challenges is what is the future? If what our goal is to change the functionality of paper in the most efficient way possible. If we're saying what our goal is, and that is we need to change the functionality of paper for a specific application in a way that enables more flexibility and fit for use, that can meet the most regulatory challenges, that does work on current equipment, and is the most attractive from a cost standpoint, it really leads us through some of the things that I'm most excited about, which is applying functional chemistry. And this, we talk about barrier, let's just define that for a little bit. Typically, there's 5 parameters of what we talk about barrier, which is oil and grease resistance, which is vapor resistance, which is liquid water resistance, and potential oxygen as you look at it. I guess I just gave you 4, as I said. But if we look at those parameters as you have it, in addition to that, we have to look at functionality of the paper, which is what can we do to change that functionality so it creases better, processes at higher speeds, heat seals better, whatever those functional characteristics in addition to that. And what I get really excited about is the opportunity to do that on a printing press, to change the functionality because it's closer to the end consumer. It's where it's highly efficient. It's equipment you already have. And if we can change the functionality of paper at that side, it really gives us some tools to address those major challenges that we're talking about.
Yes, that sounds like it really would be a game changer. Hopefully that will become reality at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, it's nice that we've come full circle with our conversation, and that's a great point to end our conversation. So yeah, that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Bill, for being on the podcast today and sharing your insights.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. And a quick note to our listeners, Packaging Europe Sustainability Awards will be open for submissions once again from January 20th. If you're interested in taking part, please check the link on our website, which is packagingeurope.com. And as always, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our latest episodes. Thanks very much.